Alrighty, everybody, we're back. Retired in Korea. Today we're going to be talking about a few things like Cambodia kidnappings, teacher eggs crimes, women's duties here in Korea, according to one teacher, which will blow your mind. And we're going to talk about a little bit about inflation and new food delivery theft here in Korea. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a different type of video. For those of you who don't know, I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy, American expat in Korea. A while back, it's been, over 4 years ago that we sold everything. The house, the car, the guns, the ammo, the prepping supplies, more guns, more ammo, more ammo. We sold everything. And George showed up. Hey, George, how's it going? And we sold everything, and we put stuff in a couple of suitcases, and what we ended up doing is eventually retiring here in South Korea. So yeah, there was that. Kind of different. I know most people don't do that, and but the thing was, since my wife was a Korean citizen, she became a U.S. citizen, and because of her Korean ancestry, we're able to get visas to stay here in Korea. And I was working a job, a very, very high stress job, and it was just like, it was sucking the life out of me. And it didn't look, with the ever increasing bills and expenses and property taxes and all that, everything was going up in such huge increments that it was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to retire. I just saw an article today that was talking about and said, to get, for the average person, I think to get a 2-bedroom rental, you have to work like 2.9 full-time jobs. And so, we had been kind of frugal with our money. We had been doing stuff, but still with the ever increasing expenses, I just didn't see, it just didn't give me a warm fuzzy. And then all the other problems that were in the United States and rising crime and so on and so forth. And you get tired of moving because of increasing crime. I don't know. It's just a thing. What are the odds? Who wants to be around crime? But crime always seems to spread out, and especially with some of the leaders that we have today, and I'll say that loosely, that don't want to enforce laws, and they're lax on crime and so on and so forth. But these are the same people that have their own bodyguards, but they don't want you to have bodyguards. They don't want you. That's a whole nother video. So anyway, long story short, we ended up coming here to Korea to retire. Our expenses are about half of what they were in the United States. And so, yeah, with the money that I have and the pension from the military and some other stuff, money that we socked away, we paid off our house. So when we sold that the proceeds were tax-free. So we're living a comfortable life here. It's not rich. I got some cool toys to play with and stuff, but really our life is kind of boring. We don't go clubbing. We don't do any of that stuff. But living in a foreign country is very interesting. And so you get to see up close, you got the K-drama and the K-pop and the K-demon hunter stuff. I still don't get that, never been into K-pop or none of that. I listen to a couple songs, but other than that, it's not like I swoon over BTS, and they're highly successful. Holy crow, are they successful. But to each their own. But with that, you get, the longer you stay in Korea as a non-tourist, you get to see some interesting things. And so we're going to talk about some of those things, like in crime. So one of the things we're going to jump into right now is Koreans canceling trips to Cambodia and other Southeast Asian countries. And there is online scammers stand next to the tools collected by authorities in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and they kind of do some stuff. This guy, Park Young-soo, a 46-year-old office worker, had planned a trip to Da Nang, Vietnam for this winter. We just came back from Vietnam. Matter of fact, we ended up, we went to Hanoi for a few days, and then we took a train for like 10 hours, an overnight train, and we went to Sapa. Great time, loved it there, and at the end of that, we came back to Hanoi, spent a couple nights, and then we went home, and it was a good trip. I really enjoyed it. So I have nothing against Vietnam, but and we considered about going to Cambodia. So that's where this ties in. So this guy here, Park, he ends up at reading about kidnapping cases in Cambodia. This guy changed his plans. I heard criminal organizations are moving from Cambodia to Vietnam. I was planning to go with my elementary and middle school age kids, but safety is a big concern. I think we're going to go to Jeju Island or Japan instead. Jeju Island is actually an island on the southern tip of Korea. It's part of Korea, and it's kind of like the Hawaii of Korea, but it's not like Hawaii. It's an island, yeah, that's true. But it's, if you've been to Oahu or the Big Island or something like that, yeah, I don't know, semantics, I guess. Fears of not just Cambodia, but neighboring Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Vietnam, and Laos are spreading, leading to mass cancellations of the travel industry. A person in their 50s named Sun, who had planned a golf trip with friends to Phnom Penh, said it's a waste to lose the cancellation fee, but I can't bring myself to go to Cambodia right now. And yeah, there's other people talking about, yeah, they're going to take their kids. But the Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a travel advisory for 11 regions in Cambodia, including Phnom Penh. Sinhakoville, Bokor Mountain in Kampot province, from level 2 exercise caution to 2.5 or special travel alert. And the ministry advised canceling or postponing visits until some other time. So that's a lot of places to say don't go to. It's like, that looks like over half the country. In all honesty. And yeah, it ends up that civil groups are scaling back plans for volunteers in Cambodia, trips that are going there. People decided not to go there. And this whole thing ended up is that it stemmed from, what do we end up here? I'm trying to figure out where my screen thing, okay, there it is. So anyway, it ends up that in Cambodia, Korea has been experiencing a lot of people who have been kidnapped, tortured, forced to participate in scams and blackmail. In other words, they go over there, and it's really, really interesting because they go over there with the promise of getting an awesome job. And we're going to look into that a little bit. So you have these fake job listings or investment things, and they'll lure Koreans and other nationalities to Cambodia with the promise of monthly pay of beyond your wildest imagination, which is really strange because it's kind of similar to the United States. You get these things, the scam things on social media. Oh, you can make $10,000 a month in your spare time at home. Blah blah blah. Just contact, and it's a scam. But that's the United States. So you got to be pretty dense to fall for some of that. But when you consider that Cambodia is a third world country and they're promising you a monthly paycheck of more, 2, 3, 4 times, maybe even more than what you're making, than you can make in Korea, that ought to be a huge red flag. I'm just saying. We'll get into that. So anyway, it gets, some Koreans have been captured and kidnapped and tortured, and ransom demands and the whole 9 yards. And the Korean embassy has been a little bit reluctant on providing quality service to people over in Cambodia. And so with all the kidnappings and stuff like that, it's after going in depth on this, I'm probably not going to go to Cambodia. Definitely not going to go to Cambodia. I mean, I don't have a problem with Vietnam. Yeah, there's criminal gangs and stuff like that. But if you go to Hanoi, if you go to the big tourist areas, you're not going to have a problem, at least at the time that we went. So the caveat being it was okay when we went. So anyway, let's take a look at this. It ends up that rescued Koreans reveal horrors of Cambodian scam rings, metal pipes, and electric torture. Holy crow. So there's a couple of guys, 2 Korean guys that inside a criminal compound during an interview at the immigration office in the provincial police department. And the sad thing is, as you'll see here, they're treated not so well even after the police find them. Anyway, in Sihanoukville, Cambodia, I think I'm butchering that, when police in Cambodia's province rescued 2 Korean men from an illegal compound earlier this month, the victims could barely speak without trembling. I still flinch whenever I hear the sound of a key turning, recalling months of beatings and electric torture. George ends up saying, he pops in and says, "No thank you to going there. I'm not worth anything. They'll just bump me off." Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. But you probably are worth more than what you think, especially in a third world country. And we'll get to why that is the case. The 2 men were identified and at the police headquarters after they're rescued. They've been lured by false online job promises with high salaries and only to find themselves trapped in a notorious criminal enclaves known as Wen Ki, a Chinese term for scam compounds used for voice phishing syndicates across Southeast Asia. And there you got some little bruising on there. He had been working, 28-year-old man had been working at a Korean company when he saw a Telegram post in February recruiting people familiar with computer programs. I don't know about you, but Telegram is a kind of like a messaging app that you could have on your phone, but it's not a lot of high quality calls come over that app. That's all I'm saying. The ad promised single room hotel, Korean meals, and a monthly salary of 8 to 15 million won. Here is the most gigantic red flag that you could ever see. That comes out to 5,600, about 5,600 to almost $11,000 a month, with a hotel room, meals on top of that. Everything is included, 56 to 10 grand a month. The interesting thing that we're going to take a look at here, let me just kind of move this over just a wee bit. The interesting thing about this, if you're being promised a job in Cambodia for familiarity with computer programs, and they're promising you 5,600 to 10 grand a month with room and board included, you have forgotten that like the average salary of a Cambodian is around $200, $250, and even somebody that is familiar with computers or you have IT experience or stuff like that, you're only looking at maybe $1,000 a month on a real IT job in Cambodia. So when somebody says, oh, $5,600 or 10 grand a month, you're in a third world country getting a message on Telegram that if you're familiar with computer programs, you can make that much money. Where did your brain go? There's sometimes you get what you deserve. And granted, I don't think torture and all that stuff is something that anybody deserves, but that is a monumental, huge red flag. Telegram promising you, 5 to 10, 12 times the amount of what anybody in Cambodia is making for just being familiar with computers. Yeah, that's just not the way it goes. Believing it was a legitimate opportunity, he flew to Cambodia upon arrival, and it was taken directly to a voice phishing operation in that town that I can't pronounce, or city. He refused to cooperate. He was beaten with metal pipes and later transferred to Wen Ki number 10, the most feared compounds near Poi Pet on the Thai border. The second man had been working in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, which is a place that I wanted to visit, was similarly deceived. But again, this is different than the tourist places. He accepted an offer to manage IT traffic for an online company run by a Chinese broker. Again, IT people from what I've been researching and finding out about Cambodia, is about 1,000, maybe 1,200 a month. And you're going to hire somebody from Korea for 5, 10, 12 times that amount, room and board, and you don't even know Cambodian language, Cambodianese. What do Cambodians speak? I'm not sure. Huh. George says, he pops up and he says, Darwin wins again. Yeah, I know, right? So after the company went bankrupt, he lost his visa status and was tricked into joining another operation where he tried to escape. He was captured and sold to another group for $3,000. His price kept rising, $5,000 and $8,000 each time he was transferred. One guard told him, "If you want to leave, pay the $8,000 and we'll bring you here, plus your food, lodging, and even the air you breathe." So, in other words, they're basically saying, "You owe us all of this because we provided food, lodging, and for you to live, you owe us this money." It's just classic blackmail. We were treated worse than dogs or chickens. 12 people shared 2 beds and survived on a single daily meal of noodles. They worked by day with their ankles chained and were handcuffed to beds at night. Torture chamber. They were hung from the ceiling, shocked with electric batons on their thighs. They often fainted in the dark rooms without light or air, unable to tell day from night. Chinese man who tried to escape was beaten to death right before our eyes. The manager threatened to burn our bodies in the incinerator if we tried the same. Holy crow. Yeah, you can be stupid and you can be monumentally stupid, but torture and stuff like that's rough. Ouch. They forced me to wipe the blood stains off the walls and the floor. The smell of blood stayed on my hands for weeks. At times, even considered taking his own unaliving himself, but being constantly handcuffed or shackled made it impossible. And there's the building they were in. It's like there's a little casino and then there's a building. The upper floor served as a base for the voice fishing operations. When you think criminal organizations and that they would kidnap you in Cambodia, you think of like Tropic Thunder, where they, at the end of the movie, they kidnapped Simple Jack and they were going to try to blackmail and Lou, whatever his name, Tom Cruise, who played the guy with the big hands and, did a little dance at the end of the movie. Yeah, you think of mud huts and stuff like that out in the jungles. No, this is in the city. This is crazy. On the top floors of this building, which is, wow. Talk about organized crime. That is absolutely insane. So, yeah, we have all that going on, and it just amazes me that people fall for this stuff. In August, one guy tried to contact the outside world by borrowing the guard's phone under the pretext of calling his girlfriend on her birthday. He managed to send a rescue message via telegram to a nearby Korean restaurant, but the attempt was discovered after 2.5 hours. Both men were tortured again and chained to their beds for a month, used the bathroom once a day, transferred to another building. They could be released if they earned 1 billion won in sales, which is an astronomical amount. That would never happen. Hey, CB pops in and says the internet was once flooded with bogus English teaching jobs in Thailand, but that only involved scamming for application fees. Yeah, I remember that. And a lot of the scamming for young women was the promise of being secretaries or assistants or in the entertainment industry, and it ended up being human trafficking. So, yeah. They were forced to impersonate Korean officials over the phone. The men were referred to only by their room number. Using a loophole in the compound's monitored Wi-Fi system, they left detailed messages about their location in the Sent to Myself folder of a webmail account, a method that bypassed surveillance. He shared his ID credentials with his family and the office of Representative Park Chan-dae of the Democratic People, leading to the rescue by local police 160 days after being abducted. That was crazy. George says, wasn't it Foxco in China that had nets on the outside of the building so that they tried to jump the nets to just roll people back into the building? Actually, they have that here. When they do construction on high-rise apartment buildings here in Korea, they will have the nets for OSHA safety reasons. But in China, I don't know. I think I remember hearing something about that. Yeah, with the the manufacturing plants and the factories that people were forced to work in, and then people, overworked, underpaid, and just worked until the stress was too much. Yeah, I actually, now that you mention that, I remember that. Absolutely crazy in China. So, and I don't remember, wasn't it Foxco in China? I don't know about that company, but I remember whatever the company was, the huge buildings. So they lived and worked in the same buildings, and they had the nets and everything. That's absolutely crazy. So yeah, could you imagine after 160 days of being beaten and tortured and all of this stuff, it ends up, he says, I don't think I would have survived another failed attempt. And it goes on, he just wants to go home. They remain in police custody as witnesses in an ongoing investigation. Now you think, hey, that would be great. The police got them. They're able to, all of this is over. Nope, not yet. It's uncertain when they're going to return to Korea. The Cambodian authorities are still conducting trials and identity verification. With their passports confiscated, reissuance is expected to take time. All I want now is to return home, not 1 second sooner or later, I think that's supposed to be. But even then, it talks about how later on, what he ends up doing in police custody is the conditions there aren't that good either. And you're forced to stay in Cambodia. I don't know, with the internet and FaceTime, I don't know why you can't do these things over FaceTime. Why do you have to actually stay in Cambodia? I don't get it. And if we continue on, it says it's estimated that at least 1,000 Koreans may have been trafficked into such compounds, where the official reported cases are about 300 to 400. And of course, there's always more. There are many like me who came just looking for work and end up being trapped. The government needs to intervene more actively. The Korean government task force has arrived in Phnom Penh on Tuesday night. They will meet with Cambodian officials to protect about 80 Koreans whose safety remains unconfirmed and discuss the autopsy and repatriation of a Korean student who died under torture. Talks will also cover the repatriation of 63 Koreans currently detained on online fraud charges. So, yeah, it is quite the interesting thing. Yeah, it is. That is actually kind of crazy when you think about it. Now, there are people who are scammers who went to Cambodia, Koreans that operate out of Cambodia, so there's that. And they're criminals and things like that. There's news reports of Koreans who leave and go to Cambodia because they have warrants out for their arrest, and so they go to Thailand and Vietnam, and Cambodia allows things like that because of some weird thing in the law here in Korea. Apparently, there's a law here in Korea that if you're scheduled and you're sentenced and if you're away, in other words, if you escape and evade and spend however much time away, your actual prison sentence can go away. That is totally insane. It's kind of like, I have no idea on why that is even a thing. So a lot of Koreans who are charged will try to hide out in Korea itself, or they'll go to other countries and they'll just try to wait out the time period of whatever it is. And it's for lower crimes, you have lower prison sentence or whatever, and then you have a lower amount of time that you can not be caught and away, and then your prison sentence or whatever goes away. So the severity of the crime will determine how much that you have to stay away or to not be punished. It's a weird thing. I don't even know why it's a law. It is one of those things that's so backwards. It's like, okay, you committed a crime, you went to court, you got punished, and now you somehow escaped or left on your own recognizance, you jump bail, whatever it is. You don't really have bail here. And then you just hide out for X amount of time, and then your sentence goes away. That makes no sense whatsoever. So that's one of the weird things about Korea. So that's kind of weird. They're repatriating, like they said, 63 of these people. Actually, I've seen other reports where it's talking about 70 and 80 Koreans, bringing them from Cambodia back to Korea. Some of them are criminals. Some of them are normal citizens that got trapped with the promise of too good to be true job, which CB says, like finance, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. George says, I feel awful for people, however. I can't help but wonder how common sense did not tell them that this was a bad idea. I know, right? That's what I don't get. You just have to look at the average salary of a Cambodian. It's around $200, $250, maybe $300. And then for somebody in the IT field, as an IT professional, is going to make $1,000, maybe $1,200 a month. And you're being promised $5,600 to $10,000 a month in a third world country. Seriously, really? Yeah, too good to be true. They need to shout that from the mountaintops here in Korea to the Koreans. But with that, Koreans they're hardworking. There's that, and then they also remember and they vote with their wallets, and that's what we're seeing in the tourism industry for Cambodia. And of course, they're closing down, travel advisories and so on and so forth. But if we take a look at that, Korean backlash against Cambodia hits visitors and residents alike. So, yeah, Cambodia bad. But then you also have people that are foreign residents and visitors, tourists, and things like that from Cambodia. They're here in Korea, and they're being discriminated against because they think all Cambodians are bad, and that's not the case. We know that. But here it talks about discrimination against Cambodians have surged after a college student from Yechon, North Gyeongsang, died from torture in Cambodia in August. It ends up, so it talks about that, blah, blah, blah. Cambodians may have done something wrong, but targeting unrelated tourists and immigrants is unfair. So, the hotel's attitude changed after the staff, they had been at a hotel, asked about their guest nationality, and found out they were Cambodian. And so, you're from Cambodia? Then have a bad attitude. A Cambodian migrant worker named Koi said a taxi driver told him to get out after learning their nationality. Sometimes people ask about my nationality, but it's the first time someone asked before I got into a cab. I ended up taking a bus and late to my appointment. On social media, hate posts targeting Cambodia have multiplied with such comments as Cambodia is a criminal nation, and this is why underdeveloped countries can't improve. There's something to be said about that. The Cambodian migrant who came to Korea 18 years ago and earned residency in Korea through marriage wrote on Monday, I'm deeply sorry for the incidents happening in Cambodia, but shut down the comments after receiving replies like, go back to your country. Another cockroach added, false claims have also spread in line for this right here. It said, including 50% of Cambodia's GDP comes from crime, and Cambodia is a vassal of China. So it goes on and talks about, some other cases of discrimination and how the number of Cambodians living in Korea have increased over time. And we talked about that in previous videos, talking about how there's a labor shortage for agricultural, manufacturing, things like that, labor jobs, skilled labor jobs. And Korea has a declining population and a super age population. So not a lot of young people want to be farmers or do this type of labor. So a lot of Cambodians, Vietnamese, Thai people, Sri Lanka, there's like 5 or 6 other countries where there's a huge influx of legal immigration for labor, but the economy's still bad. But it's hard for Americans and Westerners to find jobs in Korea because it's just not, those labor jobs just aren't paying as well as what Westerners want, and Westerners generally don't want to have to work long hours, 6-7 days a week or 6 days a week, and long hours, manual labor. They just don't want that. But with that comment about saying that the 90%, the 50% of Cambodia's GDP comes from crime. Here's, it's they try to say that as if Cambodia's government is saying, okay, well, we're going to talk about our government. We're going to talk about our GDP, and 90% is going to come from crime, and the other remaining, or 50% is going to come from crime. The other 50% is going to come from agricultural, textiles, blah, 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 and all that stuff. No, that's not really how it goes, but this is an interesting little thing we're going to take a look at. And after doing some digging research, Business and Human Rights Resource Center, Cambodia report reveals alleged complicity in transnational crimes between powerful officials, companies, and deems a global security threat. So Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines has got some red flags for stuff like that. And where is the part? There's a part in here that talks about, if I can, probably make it easier. And here is the scale of likely profits signal a potential rationale for such denials. Scamming has become an enormously profitable domestic industry like unparalleled in the kingdom's history. Talked about Cambodia. Formal estimates range from $12.5 to $19 billion per year, equivalent to as much as 60% of the country's formal GDP. Moreover, there are outstanding questions about the nature of this lucrative crime wave and ongoing debates on how to combat and curtail it. So actually it's 60%. But again, it's not that Cambodian government is saying, we're going to make 60% of our GDP from crime. No, it's that crime is such a huge industry over there, especially scamming, things like that it brings in like 60% of what the Cambodian country brings in their GDP. So there is some truth to that. So, when I started reading some of these accusations, and it was like, well, let me check this out. Let me dig into this. Some of them were false, obviously, but this one is, it's not that the Cambodian government is actively involved, at least as far as we know, with crime. But we're talking about criminal organizations, and the amount of profits that they generate from their scamming is 60% of the GDP of Cambodia. So again, two totally different things, but that just tells you there's a lot of crime going on in Cambodia. And in third world countries where people don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of infrastructure, you don't have a lot of education and opportunities for people, the country hasn't really progressed a lot as compared to countries like Korea. The Korean War, and everything was decimated here in Korea. And within the short amount of time, Korea is now a powerhouse in the world, whereas Cambodia, not so much. Vietnam, not so much. Thailand, it's maybe a little better. So in third world countries, when you have this huge amount of people that are poor and you don't have a government, and again, I'm not advocating more government, but I mean, there should be a certain amount of leadership within government to guide and to help the country progress, kind of like what we see with Korea, Japan, and other countries that went from poverty to global powerhouses, and at least, did way more for their people, but we don't see that in these countries, especially countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of businesses. But again, when you look at the average paycheck of a Cambodian being about $250, Vietnam, it's kind of the same thing, around $250, $300, somewhere around there for the average. What you look at is that there's not a lot of opportunities. And even though Vietnam is a communist country and it's, for the people and all this, and free education, they have a literacy rate of like 97 or 98%. I can't remember what it was. It's really high. But people are still broke, and there's not a lot of progress. It's going at a snail's pace. And so that's when you have criminal organizations that pop up and gangs and fishing, because nothing is really regulated. It's kind of like a turn a blind eye to all of those activities, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So, George pops up and says, look at the scam call in IP, theft revenue from India and Pakistan. It is huge. Yeah, India and Pakistan has got the similar problems. How many times I hearing the Indian accent from a call center, and oh, your computer is we are so sorry, but your computer has a virus, and if you would please send us a gift card number, you get all that stuff, and it's like, holy crow! Entire floors of office buildings. You see the videos on YouTube of these scammers, and American hackers hack into them, and they show how their operations run, and how really they're kind of left to their own devices. And thankfully, American and other hackers are reporting them to the authorities, and they get raided, but they just pop up at some other place. Lauren Robbins pops in. Hey, good to be here. I stopped in for the women's duties. Are we discussing what I think we're discussing? Japan blew my mind on what the courts would rule on. We're going to get to the women thing here real quick, Lauren. And yeah, it's what a teacher told some students. So, but yeah, Cambodia has got a lot of crime. And again, as some other people pointed out, India, Pakistan, when you have huge amounts of poor people, you're going to have more crime. What are the odds? It happens all over the world. So it's not like it's this strange phenomenon. And pretty much what we've seen is, like Korea and the kidnappings of Korean citizens with the promise of making $5,600 to $10,000 a month when the average paycheck is $250 a month in Cambodia. And all you need to do is be familiar with computers. That ought to be a huge red flag to say, yeah, there's no way on God's green earth I'm going to go. People are naive, I guess. I don't know. But getting back to Korea, this is kind of Lauren's wanted to hear about the women's duties, and so we're getting there. This kind of deals with teachers, and we've got some X crimes. Nearly half of the teachers investigated for X crimes remain employed. What? That's a news article. There it is. Half of them remain employed in the school system, even though there's allegations or saying that bad stuff happened. I can't say certain words on YouTube. But yeah, it ends up in the first 8 months alone, 43 of 76 teachers under investigation for such crimes, or 57%, continued working in their roles without suspension. So an accusation has been made against the teacher, and whether it's verified or not, in my thinking, you should suspend that person, or they shouldn't have access to children until the investigation is completed and you can find, yes, they're guilty, no, they're not. And if they're not, then go back to teaching and being around kids and so on and so forth. Because Lord knows it wouldn't be the first time that a child has lied against a teacher. That has happened. We've seen that numerous times. But for the teachers that have committed these crimes, again, you got to err on the side of caution and say, hey, well, any accusation should pull you from having access to children. Because at that time, you don't know if it's right or not. And if it's not, if it's true, the allegations, why would you want that teacher to have access to children if those allegations are true that could possibly commit crimes against others? Yeah, that's another monumentally stupid thing to do. Say, oh no, just let him go back to work. We're no suspension. Just go keep on teaching, and we'll just kind of drive on and see what happens. The suspensions rate have been declining each year, dropping from 73% in 2021 to 54% in 2022, and 50% in 2023. And 43% so far in 2025. But the suspension rates go down. For the last 5 years, more than 100 teachers have been investigated, but the suspension rates have been continuing to go down over time. And it's like, seriously? Really? I don't know what the conviction rate is. That would be an interesting stat to take a look at. Um, Under Article 42-2 or 44-2 of the State Public Officials Act for Education, teachers may be suspended while under investigation for such crimes. However, the cause limits this to cases where the offenses are deemed severe. It is clearly difficult for the individual to continue performing duties normally. As a result, suspension is left to the discretion of local education offices or private school foundations. What? Really? That's what we're going for? Yeah. Hack says, evening from Dubai, waiting my flight to Taipei. Wow, doing some international traveling there. Awesome. Glad to have you back on. Lauren pops up and says, in Japan, you could take your wife to court if she didn't perform her duty. Was also grounds for divorce. This is why soapland isn't taboo in Japan. Blah, 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 why soapland isn't taboo in Japan. A lot of wives approve of the service. And so for those of you who don't know what soapland is, you can look that up. I'm not going to explain it because I don't want my channel to get hacked or sentenced or, whatever. Hack says, wasn't aware of that, but it makes sense. Yeah, it's a special massage. So yeah, that's a thing in Japan, but when you're talking about, and I promise you, Lauren, we're gonna get to the women's duties because it ties into what a teacher said. So I'm trying to do this transition from crimes against these people going to school and the teachers not being suspended. Let's get back to this. And an elementary school teacher in Incheon was booked for that right there, that thing right there, was not suspended as the local education office concluded the misconduct occurred off campus and did not pose an immediate risk to the student safety or educational activities. So as long as you don't do it in the school, you can keep teaching. But if you do it outside of school property, apparently you don't need to be suspended. That is like monumentally stupid. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. You did this thing that you weren't supposed to do involving school children, but it was off grounds of the school, so we're not going to suspend you. And the fact that the education office needs to make this determination just astounds me. That is dumbfounding. I just don't get that at all. So, yeah. Similarly, a teacher in Gyeonggi was being investigated for illegal filming and distribution of explicit material, remained on their post in the school. Authority says the misconduct was not severe enough to warrant immediate suspension. So, when you... Seriously... How, if I was a parent and that was my child and you filmed my child and like that, yeah, I would probably be in prison right now because there would be one less teacher in the world. And the fact that the teacher was allowed to remain in their post just shows you those teachers should be teachers. The administration, whoever made that decision, that's depraved indifference is what that comes down to. That just blows my mind. Critics argue that allowing individuals under investigation to continue working closely with underage students is inappropriate regardless of the perceived severity of the case. I totally agree. Suspending teachers under investigation is not punishment but a preventive measure. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. That was what Representative Kim said. Education authorities should apply stricter standards for suspension from the moment an investigation is launched. Totally agree, 100%. When the accused and the victim attended the same school, the victim may remain exposed to danger throughout the prolonged investigation, stressing the need for early protective measures to prevent secondary harm. Yeah, it is... I don't know what's going on. It's kind of like And not that there's any nepotism or going on. There's kind of that in there, and the matriarchy or patriarchy that goes on here. There's probably some indifference in that if it's a male teacher. I've also read reports and articles talking about that because of a lack of teachers, they allow the teachers to stay. So I don't think that's acceptable at all. I mean, in the United States, you have something similar like this, dad would be talking to the teacher and changing their mind, and he would be suspended permanently. So just leave it at that. That just amazes me that this is even allowed to happen in such an industrialized country. I just totally don't get it. That is totally insane. So anyway, now we're going to get back to Lauren because Lauren asked about and said, stopped in for the women's duties. I didn't forget you, Lauren. So we're going to talk about that. This is an interesting thing because it was also a teacher, women who don't have children should be jailed. A male teacher allegedly tells students. Wow. Holy crow. A male teacher working at a girls' high school was accused of telling students that women who don't have babies should be jailed during a social sciences class, led to an investigation by the city education office. The post was uploaded Sunday on a social media platform X that included a roughly 2-minute audio recording, which the user claimed was a teacher at the girls' school said during a lesson that women who do not give birth should be sent to prison. I don't know what to say about that. In a recording, the teacher criticized a ruling of the Constitutional Court that made it unconstitutional for the government to give preferential treatment to men who fulfill their military duties. I believe it's the worst decision I know of. Men go to prison if they don't serve in the military, but women have never been in prison for not giving birth. Childbirth isn't considered an obligation, the teacher went on. Isn't that why Korea's fertility rate has dropped to 0.67%? Seriously? Wow. Mandatory military service in Korea. It is a thing. They have to do 18 to 24 months of mandatory military service. There are exemptions. Women are not drafted into the military. There's a volunteer thing with that, but a lot of more women are coming into the Korean military. So there's that. I mean, a heck of a lot more. But to say that if men don't serve in the military, they can go to prison, yeah, they can. Most of the time it's, there's fines and things like that. But for women to just say that all women should be pumping out babies and giving birth is their obligation to the country. And that's why Korea has such we have a super age population here. And because we don't have a lot of people making babies and replenishing the population. And so we've got a lot of old people and a lot of young people, and we don't have as many babies. And so eventually Korea, along with Japan, are going to be at a place of where they could cease to be a country because nobody's procreating. And the Korean government actually at this time is encouraging young families or young couples to have babies. They have tax subsidies. They get money for incidentals and diapers and so on and so forth. Some are offering partial tuition or full tuition for the kids later on in life as an incentive for people to have more kids because they see this decline in population is definitely going to be a problem. As Korea, Japan, and even other countries are experiencing. So, but for this to say that women should be in prison for not giving birth, holy crow. Women of childbearing age who don't give birth should be in prison if we want equality between men and women. The remarks were reportedly made during class titled Politics and Law on Thursday. The comment sparked widespread criticism online, with many questioning the teacher's qualifications. The school and local education office has launched an investigation, asked the teacher to submit a written explanation on Sunday, and is reviewing whether disciplinary measures are necessary. I that is insane. That is totally insane. I mean, uh, straight to Mr. Chippy for you. I think that's in talking about the other previous ones. Community service for men who don't want to enlist is common in many nations with compulsory military service. Yeah, and but yeah, and then there's been some Koreans that have shirked their duties and responsibility of doing their military service, and they lied. There was one who claimed to be retarded, handicapped, mentally challenged to the point of where he was like a potato. But the problem was is that he was like a high level gamer, online gamer. He was like high ranking within the top 10 in Korea as a whole. And then he played like he was a retard and, sorry for the politically incorrect, mentally challenged individual. And yeah, then it was found out. And there's other people that ended up going on binge eating and gaining so much weight and say, oh, I'm disabled, I'm fat, I can't go to the military. And, they found that out. But usually fines are involved. Prison time is kind of a thing. But for the most part, the majority of Koreans are like, yeah, we have to do our military service. It's a thing that you do. A lot of them have pride. Maybe younger generations don't have as much pride as before, but it's still widely accepted. It's not that many people that don't want to do their military service. I'm not saying it's all roses and puppy dogs and unicorns and, all that stuff. Saying, oh, I absolutely love doing my military service. No, it sucks at times, and it is, but you do what you have to do for your country, and considering that you have North Korea up north, and, you got to have a standing military, that is a deterrent, and so all of these things come into play. But the fact is, that's what the law is now. But to flip the script and have a teacher actually saying women should be imprisoned, that is the wrong type. I don't think that's in any approved curriculum in Korea. I'm probably not going to find that in any textbook. I'll go out on a limb and say that's probably the case. But whether he gets suspended, when we were just talking about the last little thing that we talked about, I highly doubt it, but you never know. Maybe it's okay. We'll suspend this guy for saying crazy stuff. But then when we have other people that commit crimes, like we talked about before, we're not going to suspend them. Holy crow. What are we in backwards land here sometimes? It just makes you wonder. So, a lot of stuff going on here. And, that's kind of a very interesting thing. There are people that won't be able to do their military service because of, either they're handicapped or they just don't meet the medical standards for the military. And so, maybe there's community service and things like that. But I mean, for the most part, people don't try to actively get away from doing their military service. There's very few. The majority of the people will do it, might not like it, but they'll do it, and then they drive on with their life. And then there's also some considerations taking. So, for example, we have the doctors. You have doctors here in Korea, people that go to medical school. Well, they still need to do their military service, but part of their service is usually within the medical realm so that they're not like, hey, I'm going to be an oncologist, a doctor, a surgeon, but now I'm going to go be an infantryman for, 18 to 24 months, and I'm going to lose all of that. No, they will take those people and they'll put them within the medical realm or the medical world of the military so that they continue doing their training and so on and so forth. So they do make consolation or compromises and try to accommodate people within special circumstances, so to speak. So, it's that's kind of the thing. Recently, I ran into a person. We were talking about, had the question posed to me about inflation and the cost of goods and services, and is that something that bothers me here in Korea? And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, and give you kind of my 2 cents on this. Prices for basic necessities rise faster than overall inflation over the past 5 years. So, Let's make this a little bit bigger. Boom. Such as housing, food, and clothing have risen at a faster rate than overall inflation for the past 5 years. And we've been here just over 3 years. Cost of basic necessities increased an average of 4.6% between 2019 and 2024. The study noted that the rate is higher than the 2.8% average annual rise in consumer prices during the same period. Housing costs jumped 5.5% on average, while food-related prices climbed 4.6%, clothing 2.9%. It cited global energy and agricultural price increases, again, the war in Ukraine, high retail costs, and rising labor expenses as key drivers behind the surge in prices of daily necessities. And that it is what it is. There is that rise in prices. We have been seeing that here in Korea, but in the grand scheme of things, compared to the prices in the United States, we're still saving half of what we were paying in the United States, for utilities and things like that. We do get the incremental increases, but they're not like the increases that we experienced in the United States. So for right now, we don't regret retiring here in Korea. Yeah, there's a rise in some prices in utilities and food. We definitely see that. But it's not to the point of where it's like, you know what, we made a wrong decision to retire here in Korea. But with that said, that's another reason why you should always have a backup plan, which maybe ours will include the Philippines. I don't know, maybe. But then Philippines has had a lot of earthquakes because they're right on that ring of fire, tectonic plate and all that stuff. They get like 800 earthquakes a year. I didn't know that. That's crazy. But with that, I also searched and found out that Palawan, the island, has the least amount, that's least affected by earthquakes. So we're going to do some research on Palawan and see. Because if we ever do need to leave Korea, we need to have a backup plan to go somewhere else. And for the United States, I just don't see going back to the United States as being a viable option, especially with the money that we make and the increased housing prices in the States. That is actually crazy. To get a 2-bedroom place to rent, you have to work 2.9 full-time jobs. That's so unless you have a big chunk of money or a great income stream and a great retirement, renting is probably going to be out of the picture. And if you look at the prices of real estate, that's a deterrent as well. So that's why we're kind of looking for alternatives. But right now, we're still happy being in Korea. Last thing we're going to talk about is food delivery theft. This is kind of an interesting one because it's becoming more of a thing here in Korea. Kind of like the United States. Usually food delivery theft in the United States, you get your food delivered, it sits at your front door, and then somebody comes along and steals it. Well, now in Korea, don't really have that, but we have something a little bit different. So let's take a look at this and I'll show you what we're talking about. New food delivery theft going on in Korea. This new method of food delivery theft, delivery worker faces backlash after repeatedly eating customers' orders. A half-eaten chicken box left and a delivery driver eating from an order that they were delivering. So usually what happens in Korea is you can do online ordering. They'll have like Grab or kind of like Uber Eats or, some of those DoorDash type of things where you can actually have somebody go pick up the food, deliver it to you, you pay the price and tip them and whatever, and you're good to go. Apparently, this lady here, she got the food, pulls out a glove and starts mixing up the food and eating half the box of chicken. Man, that is crazy. A delivery worker in Korea is facing backlash after being caught repeatedly eating portions of customers' food before completing the deliveries, marking a growing concern among restaurant owners who say they have little recourse without solid proof. A fried chicken owner recently shared an experience on social media, calling it a new method of theft in delivery. The case began when a customer complained that the delivered chicken looked like somebody had already eaten it. Upon review, the restaurant found the food quality and sauce were noticeably different from what had been originally packed. Security camera of the restaurant showed the full chicken box before dispatch, but the product received by the customer was only half, and it was already mixed with sauce. So it's just usually, for those of you who don't know, when you get a delivery of chicken, you will get a separate container of sauces and so on and so forth. So it's not automatically mixed in. So that's kind of a dead giveaway. Now they do have chicken where the sauce is already on it, but yeah, in this case, the sauce would have been separate. The owner reported the issue to the food delivery app operator, only to be told that without proof of the delivery worker ate the food, compensation cannot be provided. This wasn't like the old days where someone might sneak one or two pieces. It was more than half. If the delivery person eats the food, they can just deny it and ask, do you have proof? Then the app compensates the customer in the restaurant. The delivery person gets free food, saves money, and still earns a delivery fee. It's a win-win-win for them. So the owner showed the suspected delivery worker's photo to another delivery rider they knew. That rider eventually spotted the person in question while out on a job, followed them, and they were eating food again from another order. The scene was filmed and sent to the restaurant owner, who advised the other shop owner, to record the incident as evidence. The female delivery worker is standing on the street wearing sanitary gloves, at least they were sanitary gloves, using chopsticks to eat malatang, a spicy Chinese hot pot dish. When confronted, the worker claimed the customer canceled those orders, so I'm disposing it. Right? Despite the delivery working being barred from future deliveries, the restaurant owner was shocked to see her assigned to new orders shortly after, including deliveries for the owner's own restaurant. Something was off when I saw her on foot with gloves on. I followed and saw her eating the food on the stairs. I filmed her. What are you doing? That's her order. While you're eating it. She claimed the order was canceled, but obviously it wasn't. Owner called the police. Not only did the delivery worker then admit to eating the food, she said she had done so out of financial hardship. If I didn't let it slide, because if I did, she would do it again at another restaurant. Aren't we struggling too? We're all trying to make a living. The idea that someone could deliver food you've already eaten is disgusting, said the owner. Imagine I could be the customer, makes me sigh. She peeled back of the tape on the box so cleanly it looked untouched. It clearly wasn't her first time. I was able to catch her because I had a hunch and followed her, but most owners have no idea and they get victimized. Yeah. Just grubbing on that chicken. This makes you wonder about the United States. You ever count your chicken pieces when you get your food delivered in the United States? You might want to start doing that. Yeah. Pat Starr says, welcome to the show. They're going to have to put some type of seal on the food being delivered. I know, right? That kind of seal on food. I'm old enough to remember before ice cream had safety seals on them, before stupid people would make videos of themselves taking the lid off ice cream, licking it, and then putting it back. Some people's kids. Of course, now everything has got a safety security seal, and apparently now we got to have some type of, like Pat said, some type of security seal for delivered food. Maybe it's going to be under lock and key, and there's a 4-digit code that, that's an idea. Delivery driver, the restaurant owner, puts your order into a box, closes it, has a 4-digit code that only you can have access to get your food, so the delivery driver cannot eat your food. That's $1 million idea right there. So when you order, then the restaurant gives you a 4-digit code, and so when the food shows up, delivery driver has the box, open the door, there's the box, you punch in your number, boom, you can get your food is untouched. That's, I need to talk to my wife. I need to see if we can do that. You just can't trust anybody anymore. I know. I'll share a story with you all. This is an interesting story because this goes back to when we were in the United States. It was many, many years ago, and we went to a church that would have potlucks, or you come and you bring food, you make a bunch of food, and somebody else brings a bunch of food. Everybody brings a bunch of food, you put it on the table, and then you could just go to town and you have this great picnic, this kind of like a buffet type thing, except you bring food and you eat what somebody else makes and so on and so forth. So, but honestly, my wife is a really damn good cook. I like what she cooks, so normally I would eat what we would make. We would make what we would like to eat, and then everybody else liked to eat it as well. Curry chicken, a bunch of other things, chili, whatever. But we're clean freaks. We are clean freaks. And so one time it ends up at the church, they changed this thing up to where it's like, okay, well, after church, if you want to volunteer your home and open it up to the people of the church, we can go have the barbecue at your house. And then usually during the summer, and then, the next week, you could sign up for a different day on each weekend. And then the people in the church would go to that person's house and, show off their house and whatever, and have the barbecue and whatever, and they would supply food. You would bring your food. We went to one place and the house was a mess. There was cockroaches, there was hair everywhere, they had animals. The refrigerator looked like a bomb went off inside it. There was food with mold on it, jars with expired stuff that was obviously soured and old. And these people brought food religiously to the picnics every Sunday. After that, I have never eaten food from anybody that I had not seen their home because it was disgusting. Their sink was just like, oh my gosh. The bathroom was like, oh, it smelled. It was like, that put me off and my wife off. That is like, I'm never eating anything from anybody that I don't know and that I haven't been in their house. And even then, there's been some stories of what people will do to food and feed it to other people, and it's highly disgusting. I can't say what things happened. It puts a bad taste in your mouth. But yeah, you can't trust anybody anymore. And the thing is that you have people with different levels of cleanliness standards. And apparently their standards were, who cares? And it was, Pat Starr says, could you smell the animals when you entered the home? Oh, yes. Yes. And not in the good way. Like, oh, you have a dog. And you can, you can smell the difference between a dog and a cat and so on and so forth. But no, then there's the average clean homeowner that has a pet and you know that they have an animal. You might get some pet hairs or whatever. But then you have the animal smells where there's like urine that is like somewhere in this house, this cat did its business somewhere and it wasn't cleaned up. Or the dog or whatever it is. Or the sweat and the dander of the animal just hasn't been cleaned up. And so that is kind of stuck in the carpet and there's so much dog hair and cat hair and animal hair. It's just, it was like, oh my gosh. And so thank God that we had the barbecue outside because inside I would have just left. But when you see the pile of dishes in the sink and you see the dishes in the sink that had things with mold growing on it in weird science experiments, I was like, I am never eating anything from a potluck ever again. Never. It never going to happen. With that being said, being here in Korea, the Korean family's awesome. They're neat and clean. Food is awesome. It's incredible. I don't have that problem here. Thank God. But that was absolutely insane. It was totally crazy to be able to go. And I think we went to like three or four different of those houses. Yeah, it's just crazy. Lauren says, brother, it's dinner time over here. Okay. Hopefully your house is clean and you enjoy your dinner. Thanks, Lauren, for dropping by. And hopefully you got to see the answer of women's duties is to pump out babies, which is totally wrong. So enjoy your dinner. Yeah, but potlucks and things like that, unless I visit your house and see your level of cleanliness and it's acceptable to me, I probably won't be eating food brought by anybody. You know, that's the one thing about Korea. The Koreans are pretty clean. Koreans are pretty clean. The restaurants are pretty good, at least the ones that we like. And we've never had a problem with cleanliness or anything like that here in Korea with restaurants and food and so on and so forth. United States, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So anyway, so that's what we got going on. Yeah, very interesting stuff. Being retired, talked about a wide gamut of things: Cambodia kidnappings, women's duties, crime in Korea, which is kind of weird on how they do that, inflation, food delivery theft, and then the reason why I don't go to potlucks anymore. Yeah, or church potlucks, and no, never doing that again. Pat Starr says, before COVID, we did potluck at work twice a year. Yeah, we would do it when I was employed at the state of Colorado, when I worked for the state. But people would bring that, and we would cook the food there at the barbecue. So that's a little bit different than, and a lot of people would just buy stuff from Walmart and bring and have that food. But, the people that did the potlucks there, it was, it was kind of a thing. Yeah, but the potluck. Lauren says, I was referring to your descriptive commentary. Carry on. I'm okay. Okay, good. Glad, didn't want to offend you or anything. George says, I miss some of the homemade coconut cakes at the church potlucks I went to. Yeah, I mean, but then that was a long time ago. It seems like people had better standards way back when. And these days, the scary thing was with that church potluck thing that I will never eat at a church potluck ever again, stemmed that you would think, okay, their house, nice suits, nice shirts, iron shirts. She would wear a dress, and it was really nice, and so on and so forth. You knew that they had some animals, a little bit of pet hair here and there. But there was nothing. If you hadn't gone to their house, you would think that they were neat and clean people. But you got to their house, and it's like, you're neat and clean. Your house is a dumpster fire. Where is the disconnect? You can clean your clothes, and you can iron your clothes, and you can brush your teeth and do your makeup and do all, you wash and all that, and you smell good. But your house is a disaster, like a toxic waste dump. How is that even possible? So, it just, I just, ever since then, it was like, yep. And Lord knows what people put into food. We've seen, the videos on YouTube of fast food restaurants and what stupid idiot people do with food. It's just no respect for other human beings, unfortunately. So anyway, Lauren says, remember the cliche about godliness and cleanliness? I do, but in this case, it wasn't the fact. I wish it was. I so wish it was. It was like, oh, I've never eaten again. And some other people came away with that as well. And here's the funny thing, is that when we had the potluck at the church, those people who had the toxic dump house, not a lot of people ate their food after that. I wonder why. I guess we have leftovers to take home. They're all yours. They are all yours. Yeah, crazy stuff. Yeah, I wish that was the case. So anyway, that's it. Today's Friday here in Korea. It is about 8:20 in the morning, so we're going to finish up our latte. We have our gym day today, so I got to cut off and do that. So we're going to finish up this video. Wanted to kind of do a video and this kind of a weird video. But I appreciate the comments and all that stuff. But with that being said, I do have to give one disclaimer. All this stuff that happens in Korea, I mean, there is stuff that happens in Korea. And there is stuff that happens in the United States and every other country. But statistically, Korea is a lot safer than a lot of other countries when you look at it. And I've never felt unsafe in Korea for, the food and stuff like that. I mean, again, there's those outlying things, but everything that we've experienced here has been really great. So, yeah, and while there are problems in every single country, and there are some problems here, they make the news, but it doesn't mean that it's that widespread. So it's kind of these outlying things that are being reported, and I just don't want people to think that this is incumbent of everything that is in Korea. That's absolutely not the case. So there's a lot of things that Korea does well. The majority of Koreans are hardworking, respectful, polite. They're neat, they're clean, the whole 9 yards. And they're just trying to get along and do what they need to do to support them and their family and make a better lives for them and their family. George pops up and says, yeah, messed up stuff happens everywhere. Yeah. So I just don't want this to seem like I'm picking on Korea at all. There's a lot of good things that happen in Korea, a lot of good charity work, so on and so forth. But there's things just like with every other country. You have those weird things that happen, and you have crime, and it's just not as much as in Korea as it is in the United States. So just want to leave you with that and kind of, give that disclaimer, because otherwise, if it was so widespread with everything, we wouldn't have retired here. So that says a lot right there. We're very security conscious and so on and so forth. Manners, all that stuff comes into play. Being polite, respectful, that is huge for us. So yeah, if that wasn't the case here, we wouldn't be retired here. Okay, so we're going to finish this video up and going to the obligatory outro little screen here that we have here. If you want to email me, there is the email address, officialtheverylife@gmail.com, to say hi. Whatever you want to talk about, it doesn't really matter. 3D printing, miniatures, painting, retired in Korea, just want to shoot the shit or whatever, you can do that. These people over here bought me coffee. There's a link in the description box. You can do that. That is much appreciated. But the best thing that you can do is like the video, subscribe to the channel. That would be the best thing that you could absolutely do. So don't worry about the coffee or whatever. If you do, great. If not, great. But do please like and subscribe. That would really help me out with the algorithm. And the YouTube thing is just kind of a hobby thing to give me some semblance of a social life. Because I have very limited friends. And so this allows me to interact with people. And it's actually kind of a good thing. And yeah, so I appreciate you all. So anyway, with that said, everybody have a good day. Be careful what you wish for, and be clean. Pat Starr says, I always felt safe in Korea regardless of the city I was visiting. That is absolutely true. We have never felt unsafe at all in Korea. And there are some seedy places in Korea, but even then, when I was younger, I never felt unsafe. So yeah, there it is. Alrighty, so anyway, that's going to be it. Thank you, everybody. We will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, no more potlucks.